Chris Lee of Southeastern 14, joined by Blake Lovell, also of Southeastern 14. We are breaking down games on Tuesday night in the SEC. Let's start in Fayetteville, where Arkansas is an 11.5-point favorite. Tip-off 7 Eastern, 6 Central. The Razorbacks have been playing better, Blake, and I think you're kind of liking what you see there.
Yeah, they've won 2 in a row after losing 5 of 6. And we talked about it. Maybe that Missouri game would be one that sent them in the right direction. And we said, I mean, there was a possibility. You thought that, for LSU to kind of be on upset alert, and Arkansas goes in and wins that one. And yeah, I mean, they're playing well. They got a lot more confidence, and I just think this is a good matchup for them. South Carolina's not a good offensive team, and Arkansas, I think, defensively they've been up and down, but I think that this will be a game where they could really use their defense to pick up a big win here. I mean, I think they win this by double digits. I don't have a lot of a grasp on what South Carolina is right now. I know they won at Vanderbilt whatever a week ago, but I think this is a tougher task, and I think you're just playing an Arkansas team at the wrong time here that has suddenly found more momentum than they've had, in quite a while. So yeah, I think this sets up pretty nicely for Arkansas.
What's been the key to Arkansas's better play?
I mean, I think it's hard to say just because they played opponents on the different ends of the spectrum. I mean, what's the key to beating Missouri? I mean, I think that's like we said, I don't know how much you can take away from a game like that just because Missouri's so bad on the road. But I mean, winning at LSU, I thought it was just a product of a lot of things. I mean, they really didn't do, I think, a whole lot different. I think they just made more plays. They still had issues turning the ball over and those kind of things, but that was against a much better defense than LSU. And I think even here, South Carolina, you're going to get a good defensive team, but offensively they are just a mess. And I think at the end of the day for Arkansas, it's really about not just having to rely on JD Note and having some of these other guys make shots and just get more consistent play out of everyone else. I think is going to be the big key for them moving forward. If they can do that, I think that they're going to be fine. As I thought, I mean, I didn't think that they were going to kind of stay on that way that they were going. You thought they could turn this around, and they have. So yeah, they're just, I mean, 2 different wins against Missouri and LSU, but I just think that they've certainly found their way. So.
At the same time, Missouri visits Oxford to face Ole Miss. Ole Miss is 7.5-point favorite. Frankly, that seems really low given the way Missouri has played or maybe not played on the road.
No, I think that's more of you just have 2 teams on offense that just can't score a whole lot sometimes. And I think that's probably why you get some of those in terms of, low point spreads and such, just because you don't really know, this could be one of those 60-50 type games. And I think that it's probably a struggle for both teams to score here. If you just look at it from that standpoint, again, you're talking about 2 teams that are, much better on defense, and Missouri's not a great defensive team compared to years past, but it's just a much different dynamic for these 2 on offense. They just have been very inconsistent, and you're going to get a grind of a game here, especially I think in terms of style of play and knowing that both coaches are, very good defensive coaches and just the matchups and such. We thought Ole Miss would play pretty well against Auburn. They did. And, I think this comes down to it's a grind type of game. I don't expect it to be 50-48 or anything, but it's going to be a grind. And I think certainly Ole Miss is the favorite here. And, Missouri on the road, as we said, we can look at all the different statistical things, but Missouri's just been bad on the road. So would it surprise you if Ole Miss comes out and wins this game by double digits? Probably not, just because of how bad, the Tigers have been away from home. So that's another element in play here. But yeah, I think Ole Miss gets the win here. And again, maybe comfortably, just depending on which Missouri team shows up in terms of, how they play on the road. So.
Jarkel Joyner still out for Ole Miss, will be for several more weeks. But Deshaun Ruffin, who was their 5-star freshman, has been playing, bits and pieces well. So it wasn't his best game last time out, but he's shown some things at times, and that's one thing the Rebels didn't have earlier in the year.
Yeah, he didn't play much. He didn't play some of those games. He was out for a little bit there after – but came back in around mid-December, and yeah, I mean, just kind of since then he's been a regular in terms of how many minutes he's played, and yeah, he's had to play 30 minutes or so with Joyner out, and so that's helped. But for Ole Miss, this is a very welcomed game, I think, because their schedule is very tough the
Mm-hmm.
rest of the way, and they really don't have any easy games outside of probably their next game against Missouri, which is a month away. So, yeah, I think this is a very important game for Ole Miss to try to get to 2-3 here because they got a pretty brutal slate coming up after that.
Tennessee is a 6.5-point favorite heading into Nashville to face Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt got a road win at Georgia, trailed double digits in that one before coming back and winning in the second half. Tennessee just was miserable from start to finish in Lexington over the weekend. Again, Vols are 6.5-point favorite on the road, but as we've noted, if both of us live in the Nashville area, I'll actually be at that game tonight. But I just, boy, 6.5 seems a little low here. I think, to me, Blake, Vanderbilt has played to its capability a lot lately. The problem is the ceiling is just really low. Tennessee, I think, has played. I mean, Tennessee's floor is probably near Vanderbilt's ceiling anyway, and it seems like Tennessee's just due to play better to me.
I think this is an interesting game because I think there's something to getting your butts kicked by
Mm-hmm.
28 at Kentucky, even though it's it was more it was more a product of Kentucky than Tennessee. I think in that game you played a Kentucky team that was hitting all the right notes, and anybody could have been in that same scenario there, I think, and had the same outcome. But I think this one, for some reason, I tend to think Vanderbilt's going to make this interesting, and maybe they don't because maybe you do have a Tennessee team that's much more focused coming off that game against Kentucky. But I also don't think you can underestimate just how bad Tennessee lost that game and how deflating kind of that can be a little bit. And then you turn around and go on the road again for your next game against a team that not as good as you from a depth standpoint, but do have one of the best players in the league probably. And so I think that Vanderbilt defensively can probably do some things. I just think that it's going to be a challenge to win, just because I do think with Tennessee, that was just Kentucky was a bad matchup for them, and they match up a lot better against Vanderbilt. And I think you're not going to see Tennessee give up 107 points here. I mean, you talk about a rarity for a team that had been one of the best defensive teams in the country, and they go out and give up 107. That's just not something that's going to happen every night, and that's just a much different, high-powered offense. Vanderbilt, Kentucky are kind of different in that respect. So, yeah, I think Tennessee wins. For some reason, I just think it's going to be a close game. I don't know how long it stays a close game, but I think that double. I don't know. I find it hard to believe Tennessee's going to win this by 15 or more or 10 or more maybe. I think this may be a single-digit type game, but again, I think that's all dependent on Vanderbilt and what you get around Scottie Pippen. And obviously, though, I mean, the big matchup, I think, is Scottie Pippen and Kennedy Chandler. That should be pretty fun.
Yeah, Vanderbilt not going to have Rodney Chapman again, it sounds like. In Tennessee, I think Tennessee will probably pound the ball in the post. Vanderbilt's got one pretty good post defender in Quentin Malloy-Brown. But if they get him in foul trouble, there's just not much left behind him. It's a bunch of undersized guys to guard Fulkerson and Kumwa. And I don't know, I think that's going to be a key to me is just being able to stay out of foul trouble if you're Vanderbilt.
Yeah, and I mean those guys have been inconsistent. So, I don't know if that matchup is as overwhelming as maybe you would think it would be, just because Fulkerson they've been a little up and down, and also I mean that has been a product of the matchup too. Just I mean when you're matching up with Kentucky, it's much different, as you said,
Yeah.
than it is matching up with Vanderbilt. So I think that it's a Tennessee game that I think that they can kind of control with how they play on the defensive side. But I also think that there's some things Vanderbilt may be able to do well here and make this interesting. But yeah, I'm going to pick Tennessee in this one.
Okay. And our lines are sponsored by Action 24/7. Tell folks about the special that we have for our Tennessee viewers.
Yep. Action 24/7. We'll put the description and the details in the description of this video. You just use the code South14, and they'll match your first deposit up to $800. And yeah, you just sign up over there, and yeah, you can start betting on these games, and hopefully we'll win you some money if you use that code South14.
He's Blake Lovell. I'm Chris Lee. We'll be back with more videos shortly.